Hello.
I'm Pat. For real, this time we're gonna try to keep this one short. This is Blizzard plus X-Fal, so I guess an appropriate thing to call it would be X-Fal's Ice Spikes. So here's the deal. Blizzard does for us two things in this build. It creates ice spikes, and since it is a damage over time effect, can also proc G-Falls, which is the new thing that is in this build. We used to run Blue Rose, but G-Falls I think deals more damage. I'm saving Blue Rose for a slightly dumber video. So G-Falls reads, your damage over time effects have a 50% chance to erupt, dealing up to 41,368 damage of the same type to nearby enemies. Now, the important thing to note that most things that affect ice spikes also affect G-Falls damage. So if you already have a Blizzard build walking around, you're in a good spot to just pick up a G-Falls and call it a day. This build is supported by your standard fare of Frost Nova, Ice Armor, and Flame Shield, which is particularly important because this is not a melee build, but it likes being up close and personal. So that's an option if you feel the need to do that, or if you just need, Flame Shield to do the burning for you, because Blizzard itself, nor its Ice Spikes, nor G-Falls does activate one of our enchantments, which we will get to later. These are our primary defensive tools, along with Teleport and the Protection passive. Using a cooldown grants us 30% of our maximum life as a barrier for 3 seconds. That is important because barriers apparently turn off poison, but if you're fighting poison, I still wouldn't come up close and personal to them. This is a mistake fixer, not a solution to dots of any kind, actually. Since everything is cooldown based, we are using Ice Blades as one of our enchantments, which has the neat ability of applying vulnerability, which we don't really need because we're running the appropriate Vampiric Powers, at least on bosses, as well as the neat ability to give us a bit of cooldown reduction on pretty much everything. As an enchantment, it spawns an Ice Blade friend whenever you spend enough cooldown. Our other enchantment is of course Firebolt to apply burning damage and help activate El Talarasha, as well as improve our crit damage, which will be discussed in the skills section. As a G-Fall build, this is primarily a lucky hit build. The good news is Blizzard has a pretty healthy lucky hit chance that can be further improved with items and stuff. The exact rolls you're looking for, at least the ones I recommend, will be in the build in the description below. It is a max roll build, but I am not affiliated with max roll. I feel the need to clarify that. What are the benefits of this over the standard Blizzard build without G-Fall that just focuses on ice spikes? Well, G-Fall just does more damage and has a higher chance of proccing. That's it. Blue Rose has a 30% lucky hit chance to proc on Ice Spike, while G-Fall has a 50% lucky hit proc chance. G-Fall also does a massive amount of AoE damage that also affects the G-Fall activator, so it's just really strong. It can also activate on your Firebolt enchantment as well as your Flame Shield, although with the Firebolt enchantment, I do not know which lucky hit it is borrowing from. Is it the originator of the fire or not? And since the G-Fall proc is, not 100%, it can be very difficult to definitively say where the lucky hit chance is going. Regardless, the point is, it does work. You have two potential sources of G-Fall damage. Although the fire one, since it's not going to reflect most of our bonuses, and most of our bonuses revolve around ice damage, or cold damage rather, it's going to be slightly weaker. So it's really good at clearing mobs and stuff and keeping you safe because everyone's basically frozen all the time. So you can zoom past a level if that's what you feel like you need doing. If you just want to farm up some Paragon points for your Paragon glyphs. It can have a teensy bit of a problem with single targets, especially before you max out your glyphs and get the most out of your damage. The Butcher especially can be a concern. And he takes forever to stagger, and a lot of our power is really when something has CC on it. And bosses, they don't get CC until they are staggered, which is one of the primary weaknesses of the build really, but even then, you're pretty safe, and it can still clear Nightmare dungeons at 100 fast. So alright, that's it. Let's talk about the gear, and then the Vampiric Powers, then the skills, and the Paragons, and so forth. Oh, and before I forget, this is not a dot build, by the way. The dot is just a deliverer of damage. The dots here, that's why, Blizzard only has one rank in it. We're not really dealing damage with Blizzard, although you can certainly try to go down that route. We're here to proc Ice Spikes, and we are here to proc G-Falls. That's where the primary source of our damage will come from. But yes, as I was saying, build in the link in this description below, timestamps below. You do decide to go down that route and just check out the build in the link. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, do all those nice things and more. It'll help me out a lot. Let's start with the gear. For the first part, for our helmet, I'm using the Snow Guard's aspect, which gives us damage reduction while we are within our own blizzard, which we will be in our own blizzard, as well as for 30 seconds afterwards. I elected to go high defense in both my helm and my chest armor, although I think I'm losing a bit of damage by fully committing to it. If frost damage or cold damage is available in chest, which it probably almost certainly is, I would recommend taking out damage reduction from distant enemies or close enemies, one of the two. Pick one. Or even just switching out damage reduction from close and distant for cold damage. I'm pretty sure it's in the chest piece. And damage reduction from burning. Oh, and of course we're using Disobedience on our chest because why wouldn't we? For our gloves, we're using a very generic pair of gloves with attack speed, of course, critical strike chance, and lucky hit chance. Although I would probably change that dexterity for some int. And the attack speed for chance to recover resource because we don't have a way of recovering resource aside from our pants, which is Tybalt's Will. Which I'm sure if you've seen any sort of guide, you've probably seen these pants. But anyway, we also have the aspect of control on our gloves for extra damage. Funny thing about ice spikes and shifals is that we don't really have any aspects that refer to created damage. So we just have to pump up not only the jam, but just our base damage with some generic damage abilities. We're almost always going to have things that are frozen, so it's always going to have value. Again, the problem with this and a lot of other stuff for the Sorceress actually, and I need to reiterate this, is that it doesn't really work until someone is like controlled. And bosses, they tend to take forever to control. For our boots with the fur, we're using Esu's Heirloom, which increases our critical strike chance by our movement speed. Now, it's important because ice spikes and shifals can crit. Secondly, our crit chance is not going to be particularly high considering both our rings don't have it because they're both unique. So we do have a lot of other very useful stats, but crit chance is not one of them. This should solve some of our problems. It's also based on our movement speed, which is nice because we're going to get that on our amulet as well as a bit of extra on Esu's Heirloom itself. For our wand, and of course we're going with a wand for the lucky hit chance bonus as well as our relic for the cooldown. We're running the conceited aspect and the storm swell aspect, both of which are damage based on whether or not you have something happening. For conceited, it's while you have a barrier, and for storm swell, it's while you have a barrier and the opponent is vulnerable. And making things vulnerable is very, very easy for us. You may notice that our wand has terrible stats and we're still doing a lot of damage, so that's a good sign. And for our relic, I have been looking for a reason to use this silly roll with the critical strike chance, lucky hit, and lucky hit while you have a barrier, and its time has come. For our bling bling rings, we're of course running Shifal's Corroded Signet and Talrasha's Iridescent Loop. The stats on these are pretty nice. The extra damage over time is pointless, but the lucky hit chance on both is great. The resource generation is also great, as well as the cooldown reduction on both, which is stats that you don't usually get. I mean, on rings at least. Ignore the shadow resistance there. I don't know why that's there. That's supposed to be like a skull for the extra armor because we don't really have problems with resistances because our int adds like 20% to all of them. We have numerous ways of proccing Talrash's Iridescent Loop, although trying to get that 60% might be a little greedy, which I will discuss later in the Vampiric section. Oh, and you know, it refreshes all the bonuses, so once you get the lightning bonus from teleporting into a pack, you just need to keep dealing damage and it'll just stay there forever, so you don't need to keep diving in. Of course, for our neckwear, I'm running the Glacial Necklace. When you cast Blizzard, it will periodically spawn ice spikes, for dealing up to, 30,000-ish damage, and your ice spikes deal extra damage to frozen enemies. Yet another, please have something happening to your bad guys effect. Unlike, say, the Necromancer, or even the Barbarian, or even the Rogue, or basically any other class, so much of the Sorceress's power lies in causing status effects to things, which is fine. It makes it unique, but it does come with a few caveats. The good news is you can apply status effects willy-nilly. Alright, Vampiric Powers time. Okay, a Curse Touch and Prey on the Weak, of course, are here. One allows us to inflict Vampiric Curse, the other applies vulnerable to things with a Vampiric Curse, allowing us to play safe from far away and using it as our main source of vulnerability, which by the way combos very nicely with Ice Blades and allows us to keep our cooldowns nice and low. Metamorphosis, shown here with way too many levels on it, is also a mainstay and a good way to break out of things and give us a bit of mana using Tybalt. But then there's Ravenous. Ravenous is here so you can cast as many blizzards as you can in a limited amount of time. Just casting them faster is good. 1, it spawns more ice shards, and 2, a blizzard does stack in terms of damage, and so does ice shards in that respect, I guess. So while this isn't a attack speed build, attack speed does help it out a lot. So you can stack a lot of things in that area and let the ice spikes do the work. These last two are interchangeable and are the options because you're going to get 5 and this is your 5th one. Either Infection, which allows us to get an extra 15% potentially from our Talarasha, or Domination, which allows us to deal up to 24% more damage against things that are frozen, stunned, feared, or immobilized. Now, here's the deal. Infection allows you to do more consistent damage before something is controlled, while Domination allows you to do damage once they're controlled. Now, it is up to you which one you want to go with. Personally, I would go with Domination because it is just straight up more damage than Talarasha, unless there is math that I am not understanding. Of course, Infection is just more consistent in that it doesn't require you to, freeze or stagger something first, which can be the difference between getting out alive and not getting out alive. Oh, and yeah, this works on full clear as well as just sprinting through things. I guess some people like to do it. I personally like the full clear because I'm pretty sure Abattoir is all about clearing stuff rather than getting to the end of a maze faster, so keep that in mind. Alright, now I'm going to send you over to Past Pat, who will talk about skills and Paragon Glyphs. Alright, let's make this fast. Firebolt for the enchantment. Blizzard does not apply it, neither do the ice spikes, but the teleport and the ice blades do. Potent warding for a little bit of extra defense, although our resistances are pretty much maxed out, a little bit wouldn't hurt. If you're not maxed out, I mean. Devastation because I need to put a point somewhere because it wouldn't let us go through, that's just how that works. Flame Shield, of course, with the mana reduction upgrade. Teleport 5 ranks to minimize its cooldown, and we're taking Shimmering Teleport. I don't know anybody who would pick Mystical Teleport. Even Crackling Energy builds would probably not build that. Oh, of course, 1 racket Elemental Attunement, 3 in Glass Cannon, yada yada. First node of Enhanced Ice Armor, so that you get more mana regeneration when it's up. And since we are running a Cursed Touch, or that thing that lets us apply Vulnerable from a distance, we don't really need the Vulnerable from Mystical, so we went with Shimmering Frost Nova. Precision Magic, because there's a lot to multiply here, there's a lot to add in terms of Lucky Hit, and we really want those X-Foul procs. Ice Blades, of course, both on an enchantment so that we can spawn more, as well as on our bar so that we can manage our cooldowns. And by manage, I mean lower them every time they whack something that is vulnerable, of which almost everything will be, at least anything that survives. 3 ranks in Mana Shield for the defense, as well as 3 ranks in Protection for the defense, the barrier. 1 rank in Blizzard because I did briefly play with the idea of putting more ranks in Blizzard to have it do more damage, and the damage can become substantial, but it's not the point of the build. The point of the build is for X-Foul procs, and that works out pretty well. X-Foul procs and Ice Spikes? Ice Spikes, yeah, that's the one. Mage's Blizzard, of course, to make it last a bit longer. We don't need this because we don't have a core skill. Put a little bit into Devouring Blaze for that critical strike damage. And let's see, what do we all... Permafrost, Icy Touch, Frigid Breeze for the extra mana. I know it's a lucky effect, that's just 20%, but we also don't have any other mana production besides good old Tide Bolt. And sometimes we need a little bit of help. Also lets you just spam things, or make an attempt to just spam things when the boss is staggered. Frost for the extra damage against chilled or frozen. It's... everything you touch is going to be chilled, so it's always going to be active. And of course, we're picking up Avalanche for the free cast of Blizzard. I did think of Shatter for clearing, but clearing is not our problem. It is single targets and bosses, and even those, not really that big of a problem. Okay, Paragons. It's gonna drive me a little nuts, I think. It did drive me a little bit nuts. Take a look at the Paragons we've used. We use Control because of the extra damage, the enormous amount of damage, as well as the enormous amount of bonus damage to crowd-controlled enemies. 145%, Jesus. Really. Destruction for the critical strikes. We are going to deliver critical strikes at a time, thanks to the power of Ice Spikes and X-Foul. The good news is, even if those would not have procced it, the fact that it didn't... oh wait, we have to reset. The fact that it increases our critical strike damage is well worth the investment. We're also running Elementalist, not necessarily for it, because we're not dealing Fire and Lightning consistently. Fire and Lightning are based on our enchantment burn as well as our teleport, since we're not using lightning snake or lightning spear, which is, I know, very strange for me. Here it is. But buffing up our non and physical damage as well as our resistances is also very much welcome. Unfortunately, it does not scale with levels, so what you're gonna do? Reinforced to survive. Flame Feeder for extra damage. Not too much of a investment into Flame Feeder, even though we could get some mileage out of this. I just felt like we were gonna get more mileage out of destruction as well as control, because that's like straight up damage to something that's more common. We're not always going to be setting things on fire unless we're hugging them with the flame shield or having our ice blades do the work, but our ice blades aren't going to be hitting everybody. They're usually going to be hitting 1 or 2 targets at best, so didn't seem like a worthy investment. Am I wheezing? I think I need to take a thing. First we took Stalagmite, where Stalagmite, show yourself. There you go. Plus 82% ice spike skill damage as well as enhanced critical strike chance. Even though we only have Blizzard to spawn it and we're not running the Blue Rose, I think it's still worth it. Oh, and Territorial to survive, because I like diving with this build. Interestingly enough, I like diving with it to freeze and then dump and then leave, which might not be the smartest play, especially if you're against poison. In fact, if you see any sort of poison in the nightmare dungeon you're facing, don't do that. I don't do that, and I'm pretty dumb, so be smarter than me and don't do that. Instead, play classic Blizzard, which is just stay away and hurl stuff at them until something dies. So that's all of it. We do take 2 nodes, both of the ice nodes, such as Frigid Fate, for the extra damage against vulnerable, which, by the way, is all of your damage, not just your ice, just in case you want to start playing around with Frigid Fate mixed in with other stuff. And of course, Icefall Frost skills deal extra damage to vulnerable enemies, doubled if the enemy is also frozen, which is like a staggered boss. I mean, it's not literally frozen, but it counts as frozen, so I think Icefall does it. Anyway, back to you, Editor Pat. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, follow me on twitch.tv/Patinator TV. Do all those nice things and more, please. It will help me out a lot. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm Patinator. I'll see you later.